And we're live. Only a minute later than what I actually put on the thing. But here we are. We're going to be talking about Spellcraft for personal protection today. Okay. I might need to give everyone a minute to get here today. Just a moment. Let me go ahead and send this over there. Start with some personal updates. Spent a good portion of the day fishing. On a, I guess, I don't know if you call it political note or whatever. It's 4th of July. Wish I could be a little more excited about that, but I'm not. Well, I'm in Canada, but that's not why, It's 250th year celebration should be a huge deal, but it's hard to celebrate this year. Anyways, happy 4th of July. Here we are. We're going to be talking about Spellcraft for personal protection today. Hey, Kira, glad to see you. The first thing we're going to be drinking tonight is a gold sour. I've only got 2 beers. I didn't get make sure I don't get enough to get crazy drunk. Gold sour, peach and lemon zest. Well, it's wet. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be talking about Spellcraft for personal protection today. We're going to go a little bit over the staff short and video that I published this week. Talk about those and a little bit more about why that matters beyond, it is important to be able to protect oneself. Hearing fireworks everywhere. Yeah, I bet. Hey, Romstead. I do miss the fireworks. Being up here in Canada, I'm not going to be seeing any fireworks tonight. And they didn't do them on Canada Day either, which was on the 1st. But there's a lot of trees around here and it's real dry. So unless they were doing them over the ocean, it wouldn't have been a good idea anyways. Let's see, other personal updates. Can't think of much, really. Still excited about having seen that unicorn. That was pretty cool. Okay, so Spellcraft for personal protection. We're going to focus more on the defense aspect of that today, less than the combat aspects. Protection spells, that sort of thing. Okay, so we'll start with the basics. We've talked about this before on the channel with just basic shielding. And like I said, we've talked about this before on the lives even, but your main key to protection and as far as shielding goes is visualization. Most people start with imagining essentially a bubble that goes out around them and essentially creates an area of personal space, an area where, like I talk about with the banishings, about projecting your presence into an area. That's what you're actually doing when you're creating the bubble. And bubble isn't the best term for it. A lot of people think, oh, a bubble can pop, but you're creating space. And then, like I said, it's visualization. So from there, you can create that outer edge in any way that resonates with you for being something protective. A lot of people use thorns or rose bushes. That's one of the things that I use a lot is intertwining weaving of wild rose bushes that create a circle around me. And that it can be quite effective because there's a lot of hey Black Unigriffin, glad to see you. We're talking about personal spellcraft for personal protection today, which you probably saw from the name. Um, and we're going to go over some of the cane stuff that I was talking about, the dream staff, and how to use that on a physical level. But we're mostly going to be focusing on protection and defensive type magic. We were talking about the the bubble shield that I was talking about in previous lives, and that um it is essentially visualization. One of the things I forgot to say because I've talked about it so many times is that you do want to imagine this projecting out around you. I like to start like I do with a lot of things in the belly and then up into the center of my chest and then imagine it coming out my arms and coming down my arms into my forearms, my wrists, my hands, and then projecting out of my hands and beginning from there. But it doesn't need to start from there. Uh, my mom got very into this particular type of protection, and she would just imagine it coming out of her chest, just a bubble, and then she advanced to the roses and thorns that I was talking about, and eventually she actually did have all kinds of little fey guardians and different stuff that would hang out around her. But this shielding that I'm talking about, this is something that isn't just for when we're going to go to sleep. That's when my mom used it most. She was very into protecting her dreams because she had a lot of nighttime visitors and she wanted to make sure that only the friendly ones could get through. That being said, shielding can be a lot more than that. This is a type of protection that can even begin getting linked to glamour magic, right? We imagine that presence coming out. And then if we're trying to keep people away from us, that thorny outer shell that I was just talking about is a great choice. Just projects a thorniness. You can even imagine it as a bunch of little poking needles poking out all around you and creating a barrier. And this will keep people a little distant, right? And sometimes that's all we really want. But can be used in the opposite. And this is as well a form of protection to make oneself likable or just have a feeling of whatever it is you want to project. This outer shell, you can make it smell like flowers and roses and make people be drawn to you. You can imagine lavender. And if you're using anything specific with the type of herb, you can even get a little pouch, a bit of that herb in it, because the closer we can bring the variables of what we're visualizing into the actual spell, the closest we can get that momentum of what we're working with, the more potent the protection spell is going to be. So if you're getting in the habit of creating one of using a lavender um, shielding technique where you're actually imagining the smell of lavender or the flowers themselves creating a shield around you that doesn't let things through, but also projects calm. Then getting a little pouch with a bit of lavender to keep on you or wearing a little necklace around your neck would be very useful to making that stronger. The same if you were using the wild rose, you could have, depending on which way you wanted to go about that, you could wear a small pouch with a wild rose thorn and a few petals in it, so that you can imagine you have a barrier that keeps people out, but also creates, well, some interest from the flowers if that's what you wanted to do, right? This is a might even be a good way to go social when you're going to go socialize. And then when you come into contact with people like at the club or a bar or wherever you're at, if it's someone that you want to be kept away, you visualize the thorn. And then when you're trying to talk to someone, get someone's attention, you could then use the rose petals. Now, that is, again, verging on glamour magic, which, in my opinion, isn't necessarily a bad thing. We're not going to focus on love spells and attraction magic tonight, but I see nothing wrong with using spells that make yourself appear more attractive and more interesting, right? It's just when you start casting spells to affect someone else's will that it becomes an issue. Small glamour magic like that is, in my opinion, a minor thing. Part of courting, even perhaps. It's when you start directing spells. But anyways, getting a bit off subject. The point here is that when we're creating these protection spells, anything that we want to imagine it with, then having an object connected to that is extremely helpful. Traditionally, one of the things people would carry is iron. Like back in the day, one believed carrying a piece of iron was a form of protection. This was a very long time ago, but that's even where we kind of get the idea that Fae are harmed by iron. Some are kind of, but not all. And part of where that idea comes from is simply from people wearing carrying pieces of iron as a symbolic protection. Yes, we definitely don't want to be doing any spells that affect the will of others. No kind domination work is not, well, especially for someone in my position where my whole deal with the horde and the audience is that we're trying to get as many people to become self-aware and have free will as possible. So it's extremely counterproductive, but also, especially when you're working with spells or using a domination type spell to make someone fall in love with you, you are not just casting a curse on the person, because that's what that is. That's what that is when you do domination work on someone to make them love you. That's a curse. But you're cursing both of you. Because if you're doing that kind of work, you're casting a spell on yourself too. And it is a curse. And so doing that type of work is literally cursing yourself. And it also, when you manage to actually subvert someone else's free will, it creates kind of like a radioactivity inside of the lines of probability and fate of both you and the target. So not only is it not real love, which I very much agree with you on that, it is also destructive to yourself and that other person. So in the end, even for moral implications aside, it's a bad idea. It's just it just doesn't work out. I've never seen it work out. That being said, you can do consensual love spells. For example, Felix and I actually have spell work involved in our romance and ways to keep us connected and keep us close to each other. But that we were already in love before we started doing that stuff. It's simply part of how we express that love. That being said, I did cast a spell to find a perfect partner and actually wrote down what I wanted in a partner, and Felix pretty much fit that bill. Almost everything I'd written on the list, except for the few that were, like they're not rich. But I knew that when I was being greedy. You can only get asked for so much. Yeah, and that's part of why it never works out is because the other person is going to work out. Hello, my love. I was just talking about you. Yeah, that's exactly it, Black Unigriffin. Like that's what I was saying about spells, glamour magic. I mean, as long as you're not like completely faking who you are through wearing masks and like hardcore glamour magic, because that's unethical in another way. That's unethical in the same way as lying to the other person about who you are, right? But just using a little bit of magic to make yourself more attractive to the person in a moment, more appealing, and even casting a little bit of magic to get the opportune moment with somebody is fine. It's when you do stuff that is actually intended to make them think certain things. Something is intended to affect their thoughts or their free will in some other way. So, since this is supposed to be a video about spellcraft for personal protection, I think that would be a great segue into one of the areas that isn't discussed much, and that is protecting oneself from love spells. Because this is an unfortunately common practice. And it's not always hard, or it's not always easy to identify when a love spell has been cast upon you. I mean, for your hardcore domination work, putting oneself in the fount position and getting control of your links will put most of that right to an end. Like anytime somebody's got a voodoo doll or a poppet or any other kind of jar work going on towards you where they have actual links like your DNA. Then putting oneself in the what I call the fount position, or in other words, doing a personal sigil, putting a drop of your blood on it, and changing it so that all of intelligent, charging it with a drop of your blood, with the intent that will make all of your material connections under your will and outgoing only should have, well, it will put anything like that under your control. Indeed. I just really want to read that out loud because that is very correct, Black Unigriffin. If you assign high importance levels to your concept of love, it causes excess potential, which will nullify it and push it further from you. So when it comes from love and attracting love, you got to do other things and don't screw it up by fixating on it. That, very well said. Very well said. You know? And love is one of them things that you have to accept the person as they are, right? A lot of times we're in love with the idea of falling in love. We're in love with the idea of who we think the person is. And that always winds up in heartache. When you fall in love with with the image you've or mask you've tried to tack on to somebody and think they're this thing. We have to, if we really want to have love, we need to be able to see the person for who they are rather than who we want them to be. But we are getting way off subject. But I'm glad we did because that was very good, Griffin. Okay, so protecting one's self from love spells. Um, I want to start with, even though I was saying that glamour isn't unethical, it's still nice to know if someone's using it, right? So there are a few ways to protect oneself from glamour magic. For one thing, glamour magic sparkles. Almost all of it sparkles or feels, I don't want to say too poetic, perfumey. There's, you can just feel it, right? It's just like when someone puts on makeup, you can see that there's makeup on her face. It doesn't even mean that you necessarily want to ignore it. I mean, I like some glamour. I don't mind having some glamour thrown at me if it's nice. You know, I don't mind when Felix wears makeup. I wear a little bit of makeup. I've got some eyeliner on today. But at any rate, it sparkles. It has a feeling to it. And all you have to do is really acknowledge that glamour and that will kind of fade. Or you can just kind of let yourself into it. Which, like I said, if you like the person and you're enjoying it, there's nothing wrong with being glamored a little. But if you want it to go away, like I said, simply becoming aware of it. But if you're not able to identify what it is in the glamour, it's as simple as doing that with the intent of pulling the glamour from your eyes. Just pull it off. It's that easy. You can even do the opposite and try to wipe it away from the person. And if they're not prepared, it's liable to work. That makes sense. So, actual love spells. This is the one that's more important to defend against. And unfortunately, I cannot say that I have never fallen victim to. I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of a love spell. And it can put someone in an extremely obsessive state. I mean, and I didn't know. I had not fully caught on. Part of it is I was into the person before they did that. And the only way I ever figured it out was I finally did a breaking on any spell work between us because I had gotten a little fixated and I was worried that I had somehow subconsciously cast something, you know? So I did a thing to break any love spells between us, and my own obsession ended like almost immediately. And it is someone, we talked about um the love spells and why it's a bad idea. There's another one. If you cast the love spell on someone that was into you, you're gonna ruin it. Make them crazy, you know? And that's what happened there. Um, but almost all love spells, the it's as easy as doing a cord cutting. It's as easily as intentionally doing a cord cutting on the love spell. It'll break it. And like I said, if they have something where they actually have a physical piece of taking over any of your DNA. Uh-oh. Everybody's still there? My internet went weird for a second. Looks like we're good. Okay. Personal sigil, drop of blood on the sigil will, with the intent that you are placing yourself into the fount position, which is the idea that you are placing yourself into a position where all of your DNA links are outgoing only and under your power. Yes, cord cuttings can be hard if you aren't entirely set with the idea of losing that connection. This is why cord cuttings are best done by a second party. You can do a stick breaking on it as well, which is easier when you're not fully set for it. And but it has more of a physical part to it. So that intent doesn't have to be as firm as it does with the cord cutting. Now, cord cutting is best done by a by a second party. And of course, if it's a case where you had a thing for somebody and then they casted a spell on you, there might be some residuals. Like in my case, there was some wishing things a bit different even, but I just watched a movie called Obsession, and it's about a love spell that went horrifyingly wrong, where the target out of nowhere started getting possessed by an evil spirit. Yeah. I mean, weird stuff can happen when you start doing actual domination work, right? That's another thing about that. If you do strong enough domination work onto somebody where you're literally completely overpowering their free will, that puts them in a vulnerable position for exactly something that apparently happened in this movie. If you are completely dominating someone through astral means, then if a second party comes along, some kind of astral parasite or whatever happens to come along that would like to also hijack that body, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, love spells are very common. You know, a lot of people don't see the difference between getting the person that you desire to capitulate and being in love. Somehow, I don't know how they don't see the difference, but they don't. I think a lot of people, it's that sense of control. typically a cord cutting or stick breaking will help with these type of things dramatically. Like I said, in my case, once I did do something to break any love spells between us, because I was afraid I had done something with, like, subconsciously from the amount of obsession that I had, fixation I had at that point. It The fixation stopped, like like that. It was extremely unpleasant. Yeah, I mean, if you're still having weird little dreams about it, there was probably something he cast that you've never fully broken, and it's probably, if he's not doing anything to maintain it, then it's probably something he buried. Um, a stick breaking on that would probably help. Probably take care of the whole problem. Especially since I doubt it if it clear back in high school. I mean, I don't really know your age. For some reason, I tend to assume everyone's around my age. Yeah, I think a stick breaking should separate you from it. Especially since it's probably not something he's maintaining, because I'm assuming that was quite a while. That was a fair amount of time ago. Oh, yeah, actually, Dreamer, that's what I had said earlier. When you cast a love spell on someone, not only are you cursing them, you're cursing yourself. Because anytime you cast a love spell, that's a two-person spell. You're part of the target. You're casting a spell to make you two be together. You're part of it. And it is, by definition, curse work. And you're casting a curse on yourself. And it's going to have negative repercussions on both of your lines of fate. 1997. Yeah, that's, I doubt they're maintaining it still. Thank you, Black Una Griffin. We're very off topic in a way, but that's okay. We seem to be enjoying the conversation. That's what matters. So, yeah. And another way, going back to the beginning of this, because there are people that will go, that have learned glamour magic to the point that they can do essentially mesmerization, which is hypnosis through just essentially hypnotizing another person through speaking to them, and there's a lot of eye contact involved. Like, I have enough knowledge on how this happens to be able to talk about how to defend against it. And we're going to start with the glamour magic aspect of it, and then we'll talk about the more mental aspects of it, and like your NLP, neuro linguistic programming. Because a lot of what that is about using mental manipulation on people. And so, like I said, we're gonna start with the glamour. Another way to deal with the glamour magic, rather than just doing that, is we're talking about that shielding. You simply imagine a mirror reflecting back at them. That's actually useful for a lot of things. Anytime you want to blend in, actually imagining a mirror surrounding you and mirroring the other people helps you blend in, right? I mean, that's like, you know, Most of us that are neurodivergent have some ideas about mirroring and masking already, but oh, that's sad, Felix. Yeah, that's the trouble. That's the reason people do love spells is often they work. I can see how that would be very annoying, Black Union Griffin. It's like someone you don't even talk to or really think about anymore, but every once in a while you have weird dreams about him. Yeah. But yeah, the other thing to do with someone that's doing glamour magic is mirroring. And some people will use that glamour itself to simply kind of wear at you to the point where you just start agreeing to stuff, right? And like I said, one of the first defenses is mirroring against it. Um, when they start doing, if they start trying to look into your eyes, because there is a whole thing there about getting into your eyes and getting into your head through your eyes. This is the eyes are the window to the soul, and there are ways through eye contact to climb through that window. Once again, first one is mirroring. After that, you can actually just the same visualizations as before: brick walls, walls of vines, or push back, like actually through the eye contact. Oh, he would stare into your eyes. Okay, so that might be something a little different. That might be something a little different. That's where we, because the eye contact of that nature, we're getting we're getting into work that is actually on the mental plane at that point. So if there was a lot of direct eye contact, and some people are better than others at making that not obvious when they're doing this. Like there's just kind of a feeling of penetration into the I don't know how else to put it, but um if he was able to use your eyes to essentially get into your inner mental plane, then somewhere he's put a little object. He's put something, a marker, and all you got to do is find and get rid of it. And that's a lot easier than you think. Like that sounds like, oh man, I got to go into my inner mental world. That's the kind of thing that they make they've made movies about that kind of stuff. But it's not as hard as that. Simply meditate on that space, your inner space, and then will his link to appear before you. You don't got to go on like some inner mental quest, right? Just visualize. Even how I do that sort of thing is I visualize a little box and then I open the box and it's inside. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. I think that he probably understood something about the eye contact and how you can do that, how you can use eye contact to leave little marks. And that's how you're going to have to get rid of that one. If that's what it is, then stick breaking might work, but I would certainly do what like I just said with the box. Then he made a sudden reappearance talking about how his life had completely fallen apart and everything with the skull had turned into total chaos and he's completely miserable. Yeah, that's always how it ends, Felix. It's always how it ends. You know. And some people don't learn. I've seen people cast love spell upon love spell, even when you're telling them like, no, This is what's going to happen if you do that. And then they'll come back and ask for advice on how to cast a love spell again when you've already told them. The first time, no, don't do that. Well, I mean, to be clear, Black Unigriffin, I am just theorizing. You know what I mean? I haven't done any reading on the situation or anything, but the way you describe it, that's what it sounds like to me. Um, the technique I know that from is actually from psychic vampirism. Like I studied quite a bit of that with the intent of being able to defend against it for the most part. And there are times where that type of stuff can be useful, right? Not the kind of thing you should be doing for people for emotional, romantic reasons. Sometimes you do need to be able to make somebody do something. I mean, that makes sense. Makes sense, Black Unigriffin. But yeah. So, like I said, when someone is trying to do this, the first thing you can try the mirroring technique. And most of the time, when people are doing this, like I said, it's a psychic vampirism thing. So their real intent typically is to feed, but they can try to put things in your head or get things out of your head because they are accessing your inner mental realm. Like I know someone who put a clock in someone else's head essentially. Well, that's not exactly what happened. I, we're just not going to use that example. Yeah, it's a bad example though because that got weird. That got real weird. Um, that was my cousin, the one I talked about before. Put a clock in somebody's head. I guess he was real good at this particular technique with the glamour magic of being able to just look someone in the eyes and get them to do whatever the heck you wanted. But part of the reason I know how to defend against this, I would say, so you mirror. If you're aware that they're doing it, once you become aware, yes, that cousin. Once you become aware that they are doing it, that essentially makes it impossible. Anytime you're working in your own inner mental realm, inside your head, you are complete. You have complete dominion. All you have to do is say no and disallow it. If they place something in there, you do want to get it back out, right? But they can't put anything in there without if you if you say no. The only time these things can be done is if you're unaware. And that's what it is with neurolinguistic programming and all of it. All of that kind of stuff is simply being aware of it because all these are things that are trying to affect your inner mental world. It's like subliminal messaging. This is one of them things that's a form of magic and it does work. But how it works is you don't see the messaging, right? You pick it up on a level where you're not fully aware of it. Once you're aware of it, it has no effect on you. There are things you can cast, Dreamer, that are intended to draw people towards you. I have several videos on my channel about Lover's Touch. If you go to my channel and look up love spells, there's like 4 or 5 videos where I talk about the different things you can do. Um, those still aren't necessarily like if you just cast the spell to get laid. That can work, but often winds up with odd attachments. What I would suggest is I have a video on Lover's Touch, and that might be somewhat helpful, but you might want to consider how am I to put this? Not quite sure how to put it. Um, the way you're approaching it seems a little concerning to me, and not just from an ethical standpoint. I mean, people want to get laid. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with wanting to have nothing wrong with wanting sex. But there's a matter of how you approach such things, right? You don't want to come off as super thirsty for one. Um, right. I'm gonna come back to that. I'm having trouble figuring out how to phrase that. Cologne and chloroform. Yes, indeed. Um, like I say, spells like I mean both, right? I'm not saying don't cast spells to put yourself in positions where you might find people that would like to be sexual partners. But also, you know, if you're really just looking for sex, what you want to do is get in with the crowd of people that are having like sex parties and that sort of thing. You know, there are people that want to just there are people that just that's what they want to do. And then again, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with a good old fashioned orgy, you know? But honestly, if you're just hoping to get laid, that's my best advice is get yourself in a social scene where that's the common denominator, you know? Because there are people of every sex and gender. I'm not going to assume where yours are. Um, that just want to get laid. And the trick, in my opinion, the biggest trick is getting into the right social scene where, well, they have to be some of the most consent and conscious people around people doing that kind of stuff. Because if you, if you mess around with that, you're going to ruin your sex parties. And, yeah, STDs. Don't forget about the STDs and the pregnancy issues. So if you're going to be doing that, wear the condoms or whoever's, proper sexual protection. Okay, so neurolinguistic programming. This is something that was a big rage for a while there. And oddly enough, I learned it in Job Corps. I was taking like when I was in Job Corps, I originally went in, I actually wanted to be a security guard. I even had found a way to cut my hair without cutting my hair. Like had this thing where it was long in the front, short in the back, like a deep A cut. I had this deep A cut so I could pin the hair back and make it look like I had short hair for the class. And then my marijuana charges came up. So they kicked me out of security trade. And I went into the tile setting trade. Turned out I was allergic to something in the old oh King of the Earth. There was some That's a whole long story, but there used to be a naval base in the middle of the desert in Utah that then got turned into a job corps. And it turned out I was allergic to something there, but at the time I thought it was tile dust. So I had to leave the tile dust, I had to leave the tile setting trade, and I went up in retail sales. And while I'm in retail sales, they was learning all these packets and different stuff. And one of them was I had to study the neurolinguistic programming and some other ideas about subliminal messaging and stuff. It was crazy class. It's probably what I probably got more out of that class than anything else I've ever gotten in any of my official education. But anyways, the neurolinguistic programming. There are things once you know what things about it, you can defend against it. And this is the type of thing people do this. Lots of salespeople learn about neurolinguistic programming. It was real popular for a while there, and a lot of it works. And part of how this works is that, well, the one that all salespeople know is to say okay a lot, to say yes anytime you can get it, because you get that repetition, the momentum of agreement going. And if they can get the other person saying okay or yes, the more times they get them to say it, the more likely they are to say it when they actually try to close the sale. And it's these subtle things like that. But once you're aware that they're doing it, it doesn't work. So if you're talking to someone, and I mean, just because someone says okay a lot could mean they're autistic. I used to say okay like crazy, but or know what I mean with the other one I used to say a lot. But I think oh my gosh, how do I think earnest had a lot to do with that. Know what I mean, Vern? Um Another one is anytime you're in a certain emotional state, they will, if it's a state they want to replicate it another time, they will try to make physical contact. And wherever they make physical contact, anytime they want you to re-enter into that state, they will try to make physical contact in that same spot again. So, I mean, there you're looking for a repetition of patterns. But anyways, hey, um, I feel like I'm getting a little off topic there already. Like, or not off topic, but a little confusing. Okay, so like I said, one of the things they teach you in neurolinguistics programming is that if you want to control someone's emotional states, make physical contact when they're in a certain emotional state, and then repeat that contact when you want them to be in that same emotional state. And if you're aware of that repetition, aware of what they're doing, it ceases to function unless you allow it. And this is something that is common, period. Like, my mom used to always stroke my forehead, and hum to me when I was upset. It would calm me down. To this day, the sound of that humming and the stroking of my forehead will calm me right down. Poor mom couldn't sing. She could hum good. She could hum quite well, but she couldn't sing. When I was little, she'd even put me to sleep that way, and it causes that an association of that sound and that feeling with calming down. And that's what they're trying to create. But even with my mom, if she was trying to stroke my forehead and hum at me, I didn't want to calm down because I was aware that's what she was doing. She couldn't do it. Well, had less effect. Those kind of things once they were ingrained from before you could speak. They're gonna have more effect. Okay. So, um what else about neurolinguistic programming? Since we're still on that topic, hypnotism is as easy to resist as simply not allowing it. People brag about, oh, I'm impossible to hypnotize. Well, anybody that don't want to be hypnotized can't be hypnotized. You think you tell yourself you're impossible to be hypnotized, then you can't be hypnotized. Yes, that's exactly what that's called, is an anchor, Olmsted. In NLP, that is called an anchor. And you have all kinds of anchors. Anytime someone enters a certain state, you can create anchors with words. It's the same thing as what they call triggers in hypnosis. Hypnotic trigger, an anchor, same thing. A lot of the NLP nowadays, apparently, is more about controlling your own mind, you know, programming your own head, which nothing wrong with that. It's a great thing. I have been programming my own head in the form of a computer since I was a little boy. My dad taught me to meditate real early, and I, for some reason, started meditating to the sound of the old cassette drives. Ding, 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 all that. I'd meditate to it and imagine my brain as a computer. Well, for some reason, I know why. Because I knew I was neurodivergent and needed to get control of this crazy freaking brain of mine. That's one. That's another. That's somewhere where I was. That was something that helped me in life. Was I did get diagnosed very early. But then they tried to microdose me on meth about it. I did that for 1 year, and I was like, nope, ain't doing this again. Biohacking. There's a few small things. Well, Ritalin. Ritalin is essentially it's an amphetamine. It's very close to meth. And they gave it to me thinking it would calm me down, which it does for a lot of kids that have ADD. But it made me it calmed me down, and I didn't like that. It calmed me down. It lost the sharp things lost their sharp focus when I was really paying attention to something. I didn't like it. I couldn't shoot. At first I thought I could shoot my BB gun better, but after a while I realized that I could, if it was something sitting still and, you know, I could shoot it better. But if it was something like a response shot, I was way worse. I couldn't shoot the grasshoppers anymore. and I didn't like it. So I was on it for 1 school year, and then I had the summer off of it, and then the next school year, I was like, "Nope, I'm not taking that. I'm not taking that. It makes me a zombie," I said. So anyways, biohacking. Um, One of the most important things, and it's why they have them in most gyms, you want a mirror. You want to be doing any exercises you're doing in front of a mirror. Showing me There's scientific studies showing meditation can increase telomere length within a matter of months. I was just about to say something, well, not about the telomeres and all that, but I was just going to say that one of the other things is literally meditating on what it is that you want to be better about your body, right? If you're doing like an exercise routine, which if you're talking about biohacking, you must be doing something like that. So, before and after each session, meditate on telling your body what it's supposed to do, right? We're talking about in chaos magic how it's all about intention. Literally tell your body what it's supposed to do. The same as when you're gathering herbs. When you were cutting the herb, you sing to it, you praise it, but you tell it what you're picking it for. And then again, when you take it out of its container that you picked it with, you tell it again, I'm putting you into this spell, and this is what you were supposed to do. You do the same thing with your own body. Have the same respect for your own self that you would for the sage you picked out of your garden. Before you do the whatever biohacking you're doing, whatever you're doing, tell yourself why you're doing it, do it, and then remind yourself afterwards why you did it. And that will increase your results. Beyond that, mirrors, doing it in front of a mirror is remarkably effective. That's why almost all gyms have mirrors. That's actually why they're there. This is a known factor. Um, One can also do a lot of sigil work in this area with especially with the blood magic. We're talking about pinpricks here. Pinpricks of blood, no massive lettings, right? But you can create a sigil on how what it is you want to improve or create within yourself, and then charge it with a pinprick, depending on how often you're doing the work. You could do it every time, but if you do that too much, it loses potency because there's still the DNA connection, and it'll contain at a certain level, but it'll level off at some point if you're doing it too much, because there's also the significance of bleeding for something. If you do that too much, it loses the significance. Okay, so really, that's the trick with all mentalism work is to be aware of whatever trick it is they're performing. I don't have my vape in here today. Couldn't find it. But that's all right. I'll go without cigarettes for now. Obviously, nicotine. Okay, so I can stop coughing. It's an interesting idea. I've been trying to tell my younger self a few things as well. Okay. So, um, the same idea about in your own mental realm, you are under everything is under your control applies to dreams. And that's where we're going to go ahead and go next is back to protecting one's dreams. Um, I immediately think of what everybody calls dream catchers. This can be very effective, right? If you make one of these portals, one of these weaving portals, and oh, I want to remember to do this for once. Excuse me. I'm gonna for once remember to pin my link tree to the thing here. In case anybody wants to donate or purchase copies of my books or anything. It's all in the one place. I don't know what I was trying to tell me, but we'll just ignore that for now. Copy. There we are. So this is my link tree. You can contact me through here for my spell work. You can donate. You can find copies of the Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 1 and 2 on Amazon through there. It probably won't be my only plug for the night, but at least I remembered to do something for once. Did I pin it? Pin message. There we go. Okay. Now, as I was saying, the whole dream catcher thing. If you get a dream catcher or weave a dream catcher, or even just make a hoop and string some string in it with knots, and say that you did that to keep yourself from having bad dreams, it'll work. Those things are portals, filters, but certainly one can prevent any outside bad dreams from coming in that way, and probably inner bad dreams too, because you did a thing with an intent. But your own inner mind is yours, right? As long as you were the person that was inside that body, the moment it exited your mother and took its first breath, you were in control. Now, if you're someone that has DID, that means that you is can be more than one person. So there are exceptions to this rule, but other than that, and this is important to understand with any kind of possession, right? I know we said we're going to talk about dreams, but this is important. It's important there as well, but the most important thing to understand in this is with any time with the domination work, anytime with anything that's trying to possess you, take control of you, you are the one in control. Whoever was in control of that body, the moment it exits its mother and becomes its own thing, becomes fully separated. That's who controls that body. And whether it's domination work pushing down upon you, controlling your thoughts, or a something trying to possess you from the outside and control you, as long as you remember that it is your decision and you are under control, they can't actually make you do anything. It's as simple as that, right? You're driving the car. You're the one with your hands on the steering wheel. Nothing can be done car can't go anywhere you don't direct it. They can scream and yell at you to turn the wheel a certain way, put your foot on the gas or the brake, but as long as you understand that you get your foot and your hands on the wheel, they can't make you do anything. And the metaphor goes beyond that because you've also got an eject button. They cannot be in there if you consciously tell them, out, go. Poof. Same with the domination work of any kind. Once you've become aware of the domination work, it's the same as the subliminal messaging or any of that NLP stuff I was just talking about. Once you're aware that it's there and consciously fully accept that, yeah, this is what's going on, you can push it out. Still do the stick breaking or the cord cutting. And again, cord cuttings, that is one thing. That's part of the reason that I offer that. Oh, here we go, plugging myself again already. Part of that. That's the reason one of the services I offer is cord cuttings, is because those are better done from a second party. Stick breaking is not so much, and stick breaking can be more potent, but it's lined up on a particular thing, right? Like if you know this spell has been cast on you, you can do stick breaking on that spell. It's better you do it than I or someone else does it. But cord cuttings, just a general cord cutting, you're not going to be fully aware of all those random connections on you in order to consciously pick each one and cut it. Well, a second party doesn't need to be aware of what all those things are. They're just gathering everything up. They don't have to have any mental thing of this one, that one, this one. You know, they don't have to make the list. They can just pick up because of the difference of essentially the difference of an angle. Fair point, my love. This is true. And like hormones and different things like that, gut bacteria, you can be just as aware of the gut bacteria as you want and what they're doing to your mood. But when you're hangry. You know, you get that hunger you get that angry hunger. Yeah, you can tell yourself, okay, well, don't give into it, but you're still gonna be angry. You know, you're still getting that hungry feeling. Anyways, speaking of the body having its way, it is time for my first intermission. Back in a moment. Okay, I'm back. And I know this is something I harp on continually, but the personal sigil is one of the most potent forms of personal protection. We can use the personal sigil as a ward by simply placing it like on the wall in your altar room or anywhere that you want to exert your will and influence. And if we place it with intent, can become a specialized ward while still using simply the same sigil, your personal sigil, right? It can be used, like I said before, in banishings to push another presence out of the room by simply pushing your presence in. It forces anything else out. The personal sigil can also be used as the anchor point for that personal space bubble that we was talking about already earlier. If you visualize it being connected to that, it gives it an added layer of protection. One can also keep parasites, astral parasites, and different things away by focusing on the personal sigil once a day because it uh, creates cohesiveness within your astral form. And so, focusing on that once a day keeps the parasites away because how those kind of things get onto you in the first place is by lack of cohesion. There is a you can think of it as a membrane on the outermost layer of Archaea, like they were talking about in the um oh my gosh, Libernol. It's right there. I can look at it right there. All right, we were talking about that in the book club, and anyways, your aura, your that energy created mind by the mind body astral interface, a soul and body interaction that creates that energetic field. And if it's cohesive and has a strong outer membrane, it's much harder for things to connect to it. And there are other ways to go about this than the personal sigil. Simply meditating on its form every day helps. You can even, like, that's part of what's going on when you're meditating daily on all these different chakras. Again, I'm not really saying that there's no truth behind them, but it is a visualization. I use a little bit different energetic points than your typical chakras, but either way, even if you pick your own, you can imagine there is a pink Easter bunny you meditate that is, you know, a foot away from you, and it is the anchor point for your astral form. And if you meditate on that and on that every day, it will create enough cohesiveness to make it hard for astral parasites to link to you. So one of the most basic forms of passive protection is proper astral hygiene. Cord cuttings are part of that, right? That's another way to go about this. And in fact, these are only tangential, well, they're connected to each other, right? Having a properly cohesive astral form will prevent parasites from clinging to you. Cord cuttings, part of why these are important and why everyone should do one every once in a while is because we create links, all kinds of people, places, events, and some of those continue to serve us, but some weaken over time and even cease to resonate. And the more we have of these old chords, the more they're kind of dragging us down, dragging us backwards, even if you will. And when you do them for yourself, especially them ones that are just in the background, are very unlikely to be seen. Are very unlikely to be named if you're pulling off chords. So having someone else do a cord cutting helps cut those off and creates a stronger cohesion of your astral form. And that's going to get not just little parasites off, but like they said, them cords like that. And for most people, this isn't necessarily a thing that's necessarily done very often. Like, probably should be done every once in a while. And there are ways to do it yourself. Rather than listing off each one of those, you can simply visualize that you're grabbing all the cords and cutting them. And it kind of works because of the location of doing it from the self, especially the ones one really is forgotten about. They don't always get fully picked up. But most of the time, that's more than enough, right? Especially if you do it regularly. But for people that are doing client work, people that are Reiki healers, massage workers, even massage therapists, even tarot readers, we connect with each one of our clients. We create a link. We have to create that link in order to do the work. And those links need to be severed eventually. Like, if I'm doing active work with someone and we're doing work on a regular basis, I won't usually bother doing any kind of a cord cutting because, well, might as well keep the link going as long as we're doing a lot of active work. But if I haven't worked with someone for quite a while, I do have to cut that cord. And when we leave those cords, creates the same effect as like astral parasites. It creates a just small bits of energy going in all kinds of random directions, and it limits the potency of any current work. And so, if you're doing that kind of work, there are two ways to go about that. Try to remember to cut every single one of them cords and judge that for yourself, or occasionally get a cord cutting from someone else. Because when someone else does it, not only do they gather up all the cords, but any that are still working, any that are still functioning, will kind of just grow right back. Wow. Where if you intentionally pick a cord and cut it, even if it was going to continue, well, now you done cut it because you're the one that cut it. Your will is in that, right? So it's much better in a lot of ways to have a second party do that, even if you are doing a lot of client work rather than consciously cutting clients. Because you might be cutting yourself out of future work by cutting that cord. And also, we do sometimes form a little bit of care for the people that we're working with, especially if you're doing spell work for them about something that matters. You know, you've been talking to them for a while and starting to be concerned, starting to be aware of the situation and what it is you're working with. You can get emotionally invested some. And so I not want to cut that cord. Anyways, where was I? So this gold sour isn't too bad. It's 10%, which I do need to be aware of that. There's the pipe. While I'm recommending things, lighter leashes are awesome. I spent so much less time looking for my lighter since I bought a lighter leash. I highly recommend anyone that's a stoner should have a lighter leash. Trouble is, if you're like passing pipe around, and you're following everybody so they can borrow your lighter. But okay, so um, let's see. We were just talking about chords and astral parasites. No, I don't want to accidentally load some of this indica. Stick to the sativa. And where are we going to go from there? So we talked a bit about how to protect oneself from love spells, but let's talk about general curse protect. Let's talk about curse protection in general next. Okay, curse protection in general. You know all that stuff I just said about how if you're aware of a love spell, then as soon as you're realizing it, you should accept it because that gives it less power over you. Curses are not the same. Other curses are not quite the same, right? That acknowledgement or acceptance at the wrong time, the wrong timing can be an issue. And like I've talked about before, I think even in the last video about how like if I'm cursing somebody, I want them to know because their awareness of it is part of what helps it become. So, if you think that you have been cursed, you do not want to go, "Oh my gosh, I've been cursed," the second that you start to suspect it. Because there you go, you've given it potency. Whether it was real or not, now you've just done something. You just stepped on the landmine. Don't. Hmm. Well, this could be something. And then investigate and discover it that way before you accept it. Right? And this isn't just because, well, you don't want to just assume you've been cursed and do something about it. Because there's some to that too, but also you want to consider the momentum. You want to consider the story, the backstory of you being connected and realizing the moment of the curse. How does this play out in the plot of the story? The, you know, how is this going to be reacted to by the law of aesthetics? You want to have it where you discover it in a moment where you're in control, right? Where you're like, okay, this is what has been done to me. Now, oh gosh, this has happened. Ah, I'm panic. No, don't do that. That's giving in. That's giving them their moment. That's letting this curse in. Instead, you want to discover it that it exists in a controlled method. You can do tarot readings about it, divination, rune readings. A lot of times with this type of work, what I will use is a spell chain. Do I have a chain? And oh, hey, my vape. Apparently, it was under my chair this whole time. That was handy. I wouldn't typically use this, but it gives you the idea. We're going to be talking about, it's a little small for that. But, anyways, you take with a spell chain, which I have videos on this as well. If you go to my channel and look up spell chain, you will immediately come to this. I have a few videos on it. You take the chain in your hand, and then you close your eyes, visualize your form, yourself, and then imagine that you are tracing along it looking for any links that are connected to you, the curse word, and you pull along till you find something, or you don't, right? But if you do, then you continue pulling, visualizing yourself following that line, and see what things come into your mind. What images, feelings, sensations come as you follow that to the other side. And then when you've got a hold of that line, the easiest, quickest thing to do is then reach over and grab a stick. I keep a lot of like cheap chopsticks around for exactly these kind of purposes. Bring the stick up, draw the line that you were following into the stick, and then break the stick. Or, since you have control of that line at that point, you have acknowledged it and found its place. You can put it into an outward connection only, something that is not able to flow back into you. Take over that curse and even twist it back into whoever it was that was casting it without ever even having to know who they were. Essentially, doing a return to sender. A lot of times, when I do a return to sender spell, I will actually go right to the Elvis Presley song, Return to Sender, address unknown. I know such number, I know such phone. I write upon it, return to sender. And just do that, right? And I'll actually dance around the room, return to sender, address unknown, and just do a little groove. Song and dance is very powerful magical tradition. Probably the first person that ever jumped up and down and sang and danced at the same time was probably casting a spell. I would be willing to bet quite a bit on that. That the first time someone ever jumped up and down and made a sound that he was purposely echoing things, he was probably casting a spell. It's probably a shaman of some kind, Manitou, sorcerer, whatever you want to call us. Probably somebody trying to make the William Mammoth appear on the other side of the hill so he could eat. But yeah, return to sender spells in general. This is one of my most recommended go-to things. There are many different versions of it. All you got to do is get a hold of that link, get a hold of that line, and another fun one. If you don't enjoy singing Elvis tunes, is to put it in a candle. Right, you get the link. You can break it if you want, but you could also, when you've got that link, take a candle and visualize that line wrapping around the candle, then light the candle. And as the wax melts, it is burning that line and sending all that energy back. Typically, you're going to want, like if you have access to a botanica, this is one of them things where you get that candle that's black on top and red on the bottom, so that when it's done, the red turns black. These are return to sender candles, right? I mean, if you have access to a bodega, that's ideal. Botanica, sorry. Bodega, that's just like a Cuban grocery store, right? Botanica. Or any kind of shop where they sell the jar candle. They have ones right there. Say return to sender on them. Those are the ones. Or you can just use the candle and tell it that's what it's doing. Because all those things are just visualizations, right? You don't really need different colored candles. Doesn't need to be a bunch of different colors. Helps, but it doesn't need to be. Another way to handle that would be to simply throw it at a mirror. Once you've got hold of the link, found the link that's connected to you, actually put down the spell chain, and once you visualize where it is connected to you, and then pull it out, throw it at a mirror, and we visualize that bouncing back to the other person. And I know I said we weren't going to focus a lot on offensive tonight, but that's, sometimes the best defense is a good offense, right? And the good thing about return to sender spells is you have way less worry about accidentally assuming the wrong person, cursing back at someone who had nothing to do with the original curse, because these things can happen. But with return to sender spells, that's far less likely. At some point, we're going to talk about guiding, disguising your back trail when you do that type of work. We've talked about it a bit before, and we might get to it on this live, but that's more the one where we're talking about doing active curse work, and how you cover your trail afterwards. Okay, so what else? What else do we got here? Preventing curse work. I mean, another thing is the obvious. Don't leave your hair and fingernail clippings laying around. And things like that nature. Keep your brush clean if you have hair. I have a little bit in the back, just because every time I cut it off, my something on my in my blood asks me what happened to my pride. So I keep a little bit of long hair in the back. But the other trick with that is, again, assuming the fount position. And in fact, if one wanted to, and one has in the past, if we're talking about me, you can put yourself in a fount position, pluck a bit of your hair, and use it as a booby trap for somebody that's trying to curse you. Leave it where they might like, oh, hey, that's their hair. I'll take that. They put it in their pocket, take it home, and hey, they just took my will home with them. And that's their fault. I didn't do it; they did. But those are unique circumstances when someone's coming over and going to try to play nice, but they're actually coming to your house because they want to get something to curse you with. But things happen sometimes. Anyways, at some point we should probably talk about the dream staff stuff. Since I said we were going to talk about the videos connected to that. Now, in the video, of course, I'm using just a piece of fir pine. that's cut to the right size. What I actually consider my dream staff is this here. And like I've said before, in order for the stuff that I'm talking about with the stick to work properly, you want something that comes up to about your hip, or alternatively, your hand plus your hand and just a little bit, about a grips more, so that you can wield it two-handed easily. It doesn't have to be precise, right? These aren't exact measurements. I have a few that are just a little bit longer. For me, 36 inches is perfect. Right there at 3 feet. Goes right to my hip. It's exactly where I want. The other thing about it being on your hip is, if you're gonna use it as a walking cane, that's the perfect height for you to push down on it, put your weight on it. But anyways, this thing doesn't want to go out. The beginning of this, we'll start at the beginning of the whole story with the dream staff. This began for me when I was quite young. I started lucid dreaming at a very young age, and had several dream adventures and that sort of thing. But eventually, this thing started coming to me that I couldn't defeat. And even now, like, I say this thing because it didn't always look the same, right? It it's funny that I still have a little bit of trouble describing it actually. But it had different appearances. In one dream it was a Saint Bernard, which is funny because I thought Cujo was boring as heck, but it was a big giant dog, and then it was another time it was darkness with teeth. Anyways, there was this thing in my dreams that I couldn't defeat. And I had already learned how to make swords in my dreams, and I had all these different things, but I would get weapons and it would turn my weapon into something else. Yeah, I'd pull out a sword and it'd make it all floppy, and I couldn't fight it. And guns still don't work in my dreams, right? To this day, for some reason, I shoot something with a gun in a dream, it's just going to make a dot on. There are a few exceptions to this, and those have been times where I was in a space where I was actually doing something way far outside of my own head, which this thing, I don't know if it was in my own head or not, because I didn't have that understanding of that concept of things that are inside are completely under my control, while things that are in the outer mental realm and astral realm are not. So I don't know exactly where this took place as far as that goes. My encounters with this being. At any rate, it kept changing my weapons, or it wouldn't be harmed by my weapons. And so I eventually decided to take a stick into my dreams. I was like, well, if I bring a stick with me, so just like how a little boy would cuddle a teddy bear, I cuddled my stick. I went to sleep. There it was again. I wish I had more detail, right? Like, even kind of odd that you think I'd remember this with much greater clarity. I mean, I definitely remember going to bed, and I know that I won. That's the funny thing about dreams. I know that I took the dream staff into the dream and that it stayed a stick because I had a stick. He couldn't take the stick because I had the stick. He couldn't make it anything else because I had it. And I beat them with the stick and they never came back. And so then from then on, I kept a stick in my bed. And that was the first rendition of the dream staff. And I've been doing things like that pretty much ever since. I mean, Felix don't let me keep a stick in the bed every night, and I don't blame him. But um, my little brother, who is 10 years younger than me, when he turned 8, he had a very similar experience, and as in, he had a spirit that was coming to him, and I think it's kind of a rite of passage of my family line. 'Cause it would have been around 8 or 9 that this happened to me. I had a lot happen to me at that age. Oh, man. Everything happened when I was 8 or 9. Not everything, but significant age from, like, 8 to 10, it just a lot happened. Anyways, um, he had a thing that was manifesting. He described it as a zombie. And so because at this point, I suspected it was some kind of a rite of passage within my family line, I couldn't just go take care of it for him, right? I needed to let him go through this. So I taught him about the dream staff, and he used it to quite good success as well. I won't tell his story because it's not mine to tell. But he was successful in this venture. Now, later on, we connected the dream. I introduced this idea on the channel, and we connected the Dream staff with the S1 sigil and the Dream platforms. And I've got a whole lot on that I strongly encourage you to go check out if you're interested. But the important bit is from there, I learned a way to charge the staff and use it for many other things outside of its use in dreams. And the basic method of charge, get yourself a 3-foot stick. Well, again, it doesn't have to be 3 foot. For me, it's exactly 3 feet. It's a perfect length. And then hold the stick close while meditating and visualize it being given an astral form that matches exactly what the stick looks like in real life. You don't have to memorize every little nook and cranny of the stick in order for this to be, because you are going to be holding it and visualizing the energy matching up perfectly with this material form. If you have a dream platform, you want to be performing this action on your dream platform. And that gives us an object. Well, you want what we're really doing is matching its material aspect and its astral manifestation. So we're taking it. Well, I mean, you don't have to charge it if you're just gonna like go into a dream and whoop something's ass with it. That first time I just grabbed a stick and was like, all right, I'm taking this stick into my dream with me, and I went to sleep. But in order for it to be in its most potent form, you want to give it an astral aspect. You want to meditate with it in your hands and visualize it manifesting on the astral plane as its same appearance and in the same position and place as it is in the material realm, and connect the two, creating it into an astral object. And now it is something that fully exists in both the material and the astral realm. And there you go. You've got your dream staff. You've got your magic stick. And I have found, because like I said, Felix doesn't let me snuggle with the stick between us at night, which, fair enough. I don't want the stick in the bed. This isn't a complaint. But I have found that proximity is actually good enough. Like, I will often have one of my dream staffs, because this isn't the only dream staff that I use, near the bed. Not in the bed, but near the bed. And that proximity alone allows me to access it. And this doesn't even have to be a dream stick. It doesn't have to be a stick. You could really do this with just about any object. Indeed, there is very much a charge aspect to any spell. It has to have mana. That's another word that's been incredibly culturally appropriated. But everybody knows what I mean when I say that it's got to have mana, right? It's got to have it's got to be charged, just like it's got to have a battery put in it. You know, any work that you do, there is a moment where you're adding some kind of energy into the spell. Even when I was a kid and I was like, all right, I'm taking this stick into my dream and I'm gonna whoop that thing's ass with it. I was carrying it around thinking about it. I went to bed holding it, thinking about what it was for and what it was using. That's all charging. That setting of intention and putting motion, putting thought, putting power into that intent. That's charging. It's a necessary aspect. Like I say in a Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 1, intent, form, charge, release. So you got your intent. Like when I was a little kid, I had a stick I was playing with. It's like, I'm going to take this stick into my dream and finally defeat that thing. So there we go. I set my intent and I chose my form. And then I played thinking about it. I was out in the yard playing with my wooden sword, thinking about it. And that's where I was charging it again. And then it's either intent, form, charge, release, or containment. In this aspect, obviously, it was containment because then that form is contained within the stick, within the staff, whatever you want to call it. And when I went to sleep and that thing came again, I had a object. I don't have that stick anymore. This isn't the same stick. I wish I still had the stick from when I was 8 years old and the first time I did it. That would be pretty cool. But 8-year-olds don't have have a whole lot of forethought. I've had a lot of sticks since then. This one needs to be oiled. But anyways, so um we can then use it in meditation. We can then actually connect through to special points of meditation through the staff, especially like I said, if you have a dream platform, and because if you do, then when you charge the staff that first time and give it its astral form, you actually want to go up to your dream platform first and create it there. And then from there, bring it back down. And then it becomes an incredibly useful meditation tool to accessing one's dream platform, but also for drawing that energy down on to the material plane for when you are casting a spell. And you can use your dream staff for opening a circle. You can use it for directed energy work like a wand. And any of these techniques that you're using, you can draw directly from your own dream platform or astral temple, like whatever you want to call it. Like I call it a dream platform, some people call it an astral temple. There's lots of different ways to describe that. I have a friend who lives in Sweden and has been on the same their family has been on the same land for they don't even know how many generations. And their connection when they dream is actually to that farm. Sorry, I had to catch the bug. It's bugging me. Um, so that's a type of dream platform as well, right? Whatever that is, that source of power from outside the self. If you create the dream staff properly, you can connect to that source through the staff. And then we also want to be able to use it physically, because this teaches us a lot about the movement of the staff. Okay, let's see. Where are we going to start here? We'll start with the short. Actually, no. There's no point in playing the short. Yeah, we'll do the short first, just for fun. Let's see, how do I make this big? I can make it big from here. Just show you from here. No, view on YouTube. Okay. I think most of you have actually already seen. No, not share. What am I doing? Okay. Share screen. Oh, that's weird. That's not what I wanted that to do. There we go. Okay. The screen is just my phone does something weird. So now I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate a few of the techniques that one would use for defense with the dream staff. your dream staff
thing here
is something that you should know how to wield. The standard defensive stance with the dream staff, hold it in the center.
How do I get over to
like this?
No.
And then one of the first techniques that we'll be learning is very simple. You're going to aim for the hand or the hand area as they come out,
that's how I do it.
rather than the blade. You're going to strike directly at the hand. And then when you hit the hand and knock the blade upwards.
Yeah, see, so
come in.
I mean, I'm basically describing it
and deliver the actual strike.
Well enough
so,
here.
Go over that again.
I don't have
come in.
Add.
Strike at the hand or base of the weapon. This may seem counterintuitive because the blade is up here coming at you, but you're not fighting the weapon. You are fighting the person wielding the weapon. They are not the same thing.
There's a little potato in the background.
The first blow deflects the blade off to the side, and then you reach up with your hand and simply grab the front of the weapon. Bring your dominant hand down it. So, do that towards the camera. It's like this, like that.
It's just sliding your hand down. There's some other techniques we'll be
over and through
discussing in the future, but that's literally, you just, when you bring it up, if the one hand's in the middle, you grab the bottom.
And then, after you get the hang of this,
and eventually, like I'm showing here, the purpose of that is actually twofold. One, to be able to strike fast and from unpredictable angles, but also get out of there. But also to be able to protect your hands. Like I talked in there about smacking your hands. This thing has no hilt. You know, if someone smacks at your hand and hits them, it's gonna hurt. So you want to be able to move it back and forth. Apparently it is time for my next intermission. Be right back I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I return. I'm back. Gonna send my brother actually called me during the intermission there. He wants me to send him a link. So let's see. Figure out how to do this. Now I sent a link to, and then my phone freezes, of course.
Right. Of course, the link isn't showing on there. All right. So, anyways, as I was saying, I just send it directly to me. And I can get that on my phone and text message you to it. There we are. You would think. Nope. Didn't show up. Silly freaking thing. So, I know how to do it. Sorry, I'm getting so distracted by this. Let's see. It's that. Oh, lives. This one isn't showing up just yet. I'll just message him and tell him I can't figure out how to do it. I'll have to come to the channel. Send you a link. Just go to my channel. Okay. Sorry about that. I was got a little distracted there for a moment. Oh, hey. Um, excellent question. And glad to see you. It's been a while. I'm pretty sure I know who you are. Though I haven't seen your name on here in the chat yet, but I'm pretty sure I know who you are. But glad to see you on here. I'm actually, if you look behind you there, I have a golem that I'm working on creating essentially a wearable tulpa that rather than being just an aspect of me, like in an individual aspect that I've refined into a particular point, it is one that is supposed to be slightly larger than I and being made in conjunction with my fuller self as a go between. And then over time, I will begin encompassing myself into that tulpa and using that as a way to expand myself further along in the advancement towards my fuller self. And in that process, we'll be creating energy and links to myself and that golem that you see behind you. With the exact purpose that you were talking about is that once I have lost this material form as my anchor point, I will be using that as my material anchor point, which by then will probably be full of all kinds of different stuff. Because there's a thing in the back where I can open it, and put whatever I need in there. Like if I ever have to trim my beard or anything, I'll probably be putting the bits in there, that kind of thing. Okay, let me just let's see here. Why can't I find an easy way to even just send him a thing on my channel? That's silly. This should be easy. Ah. Okay. Anyways. Yeah, I'm glad you're. It's good to see you on here. That's great. So, um, where was I? We were still talking about the dream staffs. Lighter leash. Actually, I almost lost my lighter when it was tagged to me. Um, I was gonna share the. I was gonna talk about this other video here. Me, but it's okay. Just a moment. There he is. There's my damn brother. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you were homeless for a while. You've been looking for spiritual pew-pews. We'll get to that. We can actually get to that in just a moment. I did bring up a video that we were going to that I wanted to discuss a little bit more about what's going on in the video. So we'll get to that, and then we will actually talk about some spiritual pew-pews because they are a thing that does exist. Okay. So there's the one I'm going to want to share us to. Here's this one. Okay. Still a little unwieldy with this. Wrong one. Stop there. See what I mean? Unedited dream staff self-defense. Here we are. We did okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate a few of the techniques that one would use. I started this one as a members only mostly because I just wanted to edit it into the thing, but I saw that everyone, well, the number of views and the number of people that are actually members of the channel was the same. So I figured that was a good time to publish it for full public visibility, which I was going to do eventually anyways, because there's some good stuff in here. And like I said, I'm not going to put anything that's actually important behind a paywall. So anyways, here we go. For defense with the dream staff. Like I said, this is important. Also, by the way, I know it's like, okay, here we go. And then I go pausing it again. The brother that I was talking about earlier that I taught how to fight ghosts when he was a child. That's the same brother that I just brought into the live. Anyways, here we go. To the sorcerer, because we want to be able to use our magical tools and weapons on all three of the realms. And that's the mental realm, the astral realm, and also in its material form. So, your dream staff is something that you should know how to wield. The standard defensive stance with the dream staff is not to hold it like a sword or club, but rather to hold it in the center, like this. And then, one of the first techniques that we'll be learning is very simple. It is what you would do if someone is swinging a sword at you or stabbing with a knife. It's the same defense. You're going to aim for the hand or the hand area as they come out, rather than the blade. There I am. You're going to strike directly at the hand. Okay, so I'm going to talk here in a moment about how it's not just the hand, but also the blade. That's something that I missed in the well, not missed, but something that I didn't leave in the version that in the short.
The reason for that is because most of the time you are aiming for the hand. But anytime, like I described here, you're going to be wanting to be hitting from the side, not from the front. Anyways. And then when you hit the hand and knock the blade upwards, you then come in and deliver the actual strike. So, okay, go over that again. Definitely, I'll see it in the short
strike at the hand or base
exactly
of the weapon.
I was trying to.
This may seem counterintuitive because the blade is up here coming at you.
This is exactly what I was trying to explain the week before last. Is the momentum going on here? I don't think it's actually necessary for us to watch this whole thing. It's available on my channel, and we might go back to it some more, but it's not really necessary for us to watch the whole thing there. What I get into on that video is about how there is a momentum being carried there, or a completion of the same pattern that we get into when I'm talking about like the spirals and how everything becomes, well, cyclical, right? Everything becomes in cycles and spirals. And this staff, it does the same thing. You're creating spirals on both ends, right? And it's an interesting tidbit when we're talking about fighting with the stick on the material plane. But when we get to the astral, and that's more what tonight's video is supposed to be about. Tonight I'm going to do a bit more about the stick fighting. It's important that we learn to wield all aspects of such an item. But the that understanding of the spirals involved becomes much more significant than when we are talking about either on the astral plane or the in-between. Because any motion made with this has context in the entire tapestry. It has a fuller context in the complete weaving of reality. And we need to be aware of that and move it with that intent when we want it to be stirring the full tapestry. Yeah. In other words, it has that power when we tell it that it does. Not every time we bump the stick are we gonna, create a butterfly wing weaving it. A butterfly flapping its wings in China creates a hurricane in Turkey kind of effect. But it can be that when we tell it that it is supposed to be. And so when we take the dream staff into our hands with intent, we should be telling ourselves, that's the skill that Winky taught you. Winky is a dog we had as a child. For those that are like, oh, what is he talking about? I taught Winky to roll. Winky didn't teach me to roll. But I did have a dachshund. Well, we had a dachshund when I was a child that I did teach to do these little rolls where she'd pull her feet in and do a little roll. Oh, in that picture, that tree has been cut down. that you can't see it there because the top of the stump is high, little significantly higher than my head even, but I'm not beating a living tree. Yes, Winky did spar with me all the time. And back then, when I was a kid, I didn't know about not hitting living trees. And she would even like when I was doing my practice exercises when I was a kid, Winky would pretend she was attacking the thing's ankles. But I've learned. I can't claim I've always been that way. As Andy could vouch for you, I murdered all of our fruit trees. Sadly. Well, the plum tree dad killed for other reasons, but the peach tree and apricot tree, I murdered the trees. I had to hit things with sticks. I was horrible. I've been training with this size of stick since since I was very small. Even my dad teaching us to play baseball, it was the same length of stick, right? Yep, me and Aaron. Okay. So, I've gotten a bunch of things about, oh, this stick is so cool, but we haven't really gotten down to the functional bits. This is the basis for the pew pew, or one of the bases that we can have for the spiritual pew pew. It's a good physical manifestation of it. But what we're talking about when I say spiritual pew pew, when I think of that, my first thought is what I call the spiral gun. And that can be connected to this. It's also connected to her. But what this is, the concept of the spiral gun, is momentum, conflict, and paradox. I talked about becoming the eye of the storm. I care for a lot of trees. I was a horrible child in many ways. I didn't understand that hitting a tree with a stick was going to kill it. I ripped, before Andy was born and we lived in the trailer, I ripped one out of the ground with a bullwhip. Still don't quite understand how that happened. And it was a very small tree. Um, as far as types of wood, it I've had many different types of wood. This one is very special to me because it is from a wild rose bush that grew in a pond next to our house, and it had been there my whole life up until the day the city decided to cut the wild rose bush down. And having one that has significance and importance to you makes it more powerful. But you can just buy a dowel rod from the store, really. If you're going to be using it on the material plane, I would say get a shovel handle from the hardware store and cut it to the length that either goes to your hip or, like I said, one arm, a hand, and a grip. Enough space that you can, you know. Like a coiled danger noodle sunbaking on a warm rock. Indeed. We were grown up to be tree hangers. It's true. Um, like I said, like Any stick will work. It doesn't even have to be a stick. Anything that's going to resonate with you well. But back to the pew pew aspect. So, in order to get that real pew pew type of sensation, that real you're shooting something. Like I was saying a while ago, um, in dreams, guns don't work for me. There is are a few exceptions. The most significant one would be the time that I actually had an encounter with some Naga that at first they were quite hostile. Awesome. Yes, yes, it is. That's awesome. I remember making sure that that stick was put aside when Dad was on one of his tears. Anyways, um, the first thing I'm going to talk about with the pew pews, just because it's a good story. So I had these dreams, or I had a dream when I was interacting with someone who was working with Nagas, and it turned out later that me and that person weren't going to get along so well. I don't know what significance that has for this, except for maybe they were part of why the Nagas were so pissed off. So, anyways, I was interacting with this person. I'd gone out to visit them, and that night when I went to sleep, as soon as I closed my eyes, I'm outside of the space, and I know that I'm in like the astral realm, but the astral equivalent to where I am physically, right? And there's this rock, and my senses tell me I need to look under this rock. And when I do, I lift it up, and this naga, this snake, comes out of it. It comes up and it's pushing me back, coming at me, and I know I just made it sound like a rattlesnake, but it was like a giant cobra, and it's coming straight for me, and I'm back, and I'm like, whoa, 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 and it says, we're tired of people poking into our business. I'm like, well, I'm not here to be a problem with you. And he said, he's like, well, we're tired of people poking around. And I'm like, well, I can help. And so he's like, okay, well, this is what we're tired of people poking around at us. They're all angry. And so I'm like, okay, well, I can help. I'm not here to pick a fight with you. I'm here to help beings like you. Okay. Hit it with a fishing pole. That's what Dad would have done. So, I'm like, okay, so we're getting along good for a moment. And he's like, okay, we're tired of people poking in. I'm like, well, I'm here to help with people, spirits like you. I don't want to fight you. And he's like, well, then give us a hand. And most of the time, in dreams, when I fire a rifle, it just puts a dot on whatever I'm shooting at. It's worse than a paintball gun, completely useless. They give me this 22, and they set me up on this mountain, and there's a train coming by. And inside the train, I can see in through the window, which you have to understand, this is dream logic. There's this Englishman with a little monocle, and he's sipping his tea. And they're like, that's the guy. And so from up on the hill, I follow him along on the train through the window. And then when the shot's perfect, I take the shot. And he drops. And it's one of the only times I've ever been able to use a pew pew in a dream. Certainly did him in. Like, and the Naga were quite happy with me. And actually, the person I was visiting, when I told them about this experience, because I'm a naive dumbass, they seemed rather displeased. And this person is someone who is working with a Naga temple in India, or the people he's connected to are, who essentially founded a temple that was so down on its luck that they had to do whatever they could to get Westerners to put money into the system. And I think the Naga that are actually in the temple are the ones that are suffering for that. So I did what I could to help. And yeah, Andy, I believe it's behind the barn. Last I knew, that staff you're talking about is behind the barn at Dad's house. Okay, so anyways, back to the pew pew. In order to get a real good pew pew going, the first thing you need to be able to do is do this. You see what's going on here is one hand's going gestural and the other one's going witter shits. That is a physical manifestation of what I mean. You need to be able to hold a paradox in your mind. The most potent and in some ways easiest one to form is between the no thing, nothing, and the all thing. You put those together. If it's not in there, it's up in the rafters. Those are the two places that I can think that it should be. Rafters of the barn. Anyways, any two conflicting, paradoxical thoughts will work. But the nothing and the all thing. For everything that exists, there is an equal and opposite thing, and the sum total of the universe is nothing. And yet, at the same time, for everything that exists, there is an equal and opposite thing, and the sum total of the universe is unknowable. Okay, you need to be able to believe both those things at the same time. You need that paradox, that pushing out of two things that are both true that can't be true at the same time. If you can't do that, fire and water, empty space, full space. You need that something that's going to create that momentum to get it spinning in the center. And once you've mastered that concept and gotten the idea down, you then make a symbol, a sigil, a summoning point, a spark point. Yes, there you go. That's exactly the kind of thing that will work. And when you have that, you give it a symbol. Ideally, something like, well, this is what a chaos star is. You know, you can, if you once you get good at this enough, you can put all the different points of the paradox onto the chaos star. But you need that conflict, that paradox, that balance that isn't perfect, that creates the wobble, that creates the spin. This gives us our pew pew. This gives us our. We contain that and hold that and condense it until that force is within, held within, and then push it out. Pew! Got your pew pew. Or you can do the thing you can create with belly fire. So I was talking about this last live. Having a body, we are in a special position when it comes to the astral realm because we can create etherics, right? The Fae, the Jinn, people like that, or beings like that, they exist in the etheric realm. They're more than spirit, but less than flesh. We have flesh.
but also from that interaction between the astral existence of us and our material form, between our soul and our body, it creates the aura, creates our own etheric form. And in that etheric form, we have what some people call chakras. And in there, we have also the belly fire, which I've talked about in many videos. But this force can only be summoned from within an organic material being. And it is a primal, destructive, etheric force. Belly fire is brought up from the belly, from the literal act of digestion, for the consumption of acid in the belly. You can bring that force, that power up. I bring a lot of my work goes with belly fire, but in this particular case, we're actually summoning the fire itself up. And if we're working on the astral realm, then we have to actually channel this from our bodies, from the along the silver cord is what most lucid dreamers call it. But that connection to the self, to the actual body, we can summon up that belly fire and bring it into our astral form and then throw it forward and actually on an astral realm literally cast fireball. Now you can't quite do it on the physical realm with the balance the way it is, but that's how you cast fireball. Bringing it from the belly of your body up through the silver cord, the astral connection to your physical form and into your astral form. And from there, you can then project that etheric belly fire onto the astral realm, and it is extremely potent. This is why having a body gives us extreme advantages in a lot of ways. Yes, seething. Thank you for bringing that up. The hip cauldron, cauldron of warming for belly fire with bellows, breath, or seething. It's like that is definitely a way to inflame that belly fire. Especially if you imagine flame coming up with each one of those. And this belly fire can be invoked. I talked about breathing the staff and material defense. This belly fire can be, it's etheric, right? And that doesn't only mean that it can be summoned up into the astral and use an advantage there. It can be summoned into the full material physical plane and be used to advantage there. This is a way to hype yourself. This is a way to bring yourself into a fuller state where you are more capable of endurance and feats of strength potentially, bringing that belly fire up from the belly up into the body and allowing it to inflame. And this is, if one finds oneself in a self-defense situation, bringing that belly fire into the equation, simply bringing it in, inflaming your muscles and your skin with that power might be the difference between you winning or losing the fight. But in most cases, especially in today's day and age, when we are in a physical altercation, legally, what I should suggest to you is
do that. Do whatever you need to extricate yourself. Get that 1.5 steps because you can't run before 1.5 steps. Try to 1.5 step, you're just opening yourself up. Right? You just if you just kind of shoved them and you just turn, you're just opening yourself up. You need to get one. You need to be able to get 1.5 steps. But do something. Do the strikes with your stick, like I was talking about. If you happen to have a staff on you when they go to strike you, hit their hand, come around, bam, hit them again. For legal purposes, I'm going to say in the elbow. That's going to give you enough space to get that 1.5 steps, and then you can book it. Gone. Yes, break the stick in your mind. That isn't a technique, Andy, that I've been discussing with the channel a lot, but that is something that can be done. That is the way. That is the technique that I passed on to you. Is holding all that anger inside, and then having that stick that is that trigger moment to release the belly fire, that rage. Bear shirts, indeed. Yeah, if you're in a fight, you want to get it fast. You want to hit it quick. The slow simmering seething you're talking about, that is great when you're trying to build up that energy for a spell casting or for achieving that state of gnosis. We do the quick that is because we need that right now. Or like in Andy's case, I actually taught him to visualize a stick that he holds in his mind and puts rage into. And then when he needs to, break the stick and release that anger. Wow, I haven't even finished the first beer. We're getting close to the 3 hour mark. So I'm doing a lot better. Didn't get all trashed this time. Hey, Melissa. Glad you made it. Okay, so I'm gonna plug the channel one more time. I got memberships at 99 cents for the first one. You get blooper reels, cool emojis. Um, the next one I can never remember the price of. I think it's $9.99. That one, yes, $9.99 for that one. You get the cord cuttings, like I mentioned, or you get 3 stick breakings or 1 cord cutting per month. Those can be really handy. Not all of my members that are at that level use all of their stick breakings, but if you're someone that is actually in the trade, having a monthly cord cutting, very handy. The one above that is I think $39.99. I am horrible. You think I'd know? You think I know the pricing? But either way, the one above that, you get a free divination every month on top of that, along with the cord cuttings and the stick breakings and all the other stuff from level 1, which is the emojis and blooper reels, early access to other things. And then the big one, $99.99 a month, and you get a 1 hour a month personal video call to discuss, well, essentially whatever you want to discuss. Got me for an hour every month for that. And, we'll talk about your personal workings, whatever. Anyways, there we go. I plugged it. Blooper reels? Yeah, I should have more blooper reels than I do. Honestly, there's only a couple. Send those to Zay. Yeah, I've got one blooper reel where I was in the middle of a video talking about ghosts when one of the roommates comes up from behind, doesn't know I'm there. Well, knows I'm there, just come. It doesn't know I'm filming. Opens the door while I'm in the middle of talking about ghosts, and I just about jump right out of my skin. I'm like, "Ah!" To my credit, I come back down in a defensive stance, but I think I am going to go ahead and open the other beer. I doubt I'm going to finish it before the live is over, but that gold sour wasn't too bad. I know this will be awesome. I really enjoy these Lone G dry ciders. So, um, I did want to put quite a bit of focus on the actual material aspects of self defense. One of the biggest things, and I'm sorry, I really have struggled with how to pronounce your name, Kayana Reynard. I know exactly who you were. The second you show up on the live, I knew who you were, but I've never really been, it's letters on a screen. I've never known how to pronounce your name. Um, Either way, one of the things I was going to bring up is that because that's something about the way making that sound, and I did it a little funny that last time, but that was one of the things I wanted to bring up on this live. So I was glad that you brought it up. Is well, thank you, great gracious son child, and I love that you're calling me sweet as I'm talking about bringing up belly fire, but I'll take it. I do like to think that the fact that I am kind, it emanates from me. You know, Sometimes kind people got to whoop somebody's ass in order to be kind. That's just how it is. You know, there's a difference between kind and nice. So, um, yes, there's that. And one of the other things that is connected between sorcery and physical self defense, I said we were going to bring this back up. Here it is. This one's a little short, but fire of love and destruction, indeed. You want to learn to keep your hands communicating with each other and in sync with each other. And this is a vital aspect. Kiana. Kiana. Okay. All right. Thank you. Um, I'm sorry that I didn't know how to pronounce it, but this is the first time voice was involved in our communication, so it's never really been important till now. Kiana. Okay. So, anyways, as I was saying, you want to teach your hands to be in sync and communicate with each other. And I've got a real simple hack for that. This band here I have is a little short. You want something a little longer than this. Let me see if I got something handy. You would think where I knew this was coming up in the live, I would have had something, but I left it in the bedroom. Okay, so this will work. Anyways, you want to get a loop, and you should try with different lengths because the length of it doesn't matter so much. But the point is to teach your hand to communicate with each other, to get in sync. And using a loop like this is a hack. It's a biohack. It's something that just gets yourself into muscle memory of keeping your hands in conjunction with each other. And that's going to matter even with this. See, this is a bit short, but there's that learning to understand of communication from one hand to the other. And this matters not just in any kind of martial art, but it also matters in directed energy work. This is even the belly fire, as much as I'm talking about pushing it out, there is still a cycle. There is still a return. That's why return to sender spells work so well. As much as I don't believe in the threefold law, anything you send out is eventually going to come back to you. It's all spirals, right? You can say it's all circles, but that's a little bit of a misnomer. It's spirals. It's not the exact same thing repeating. So if you're doing a lot of curse work, oh, hey, you don't know about my tattoo. Felix did that on my birthday. I'm sure you know what it is. That's my personal sigil. You know, you've seen it. You've been seeing it pretty much your whole life, I think. But yeah, I did get a new tattoo. It is. It is. There is two runes involved in it. It's Tyr and Algiz, so victory and protection. But it is also a sigil from my name, like ART bent around NTAL. Either one. Yeah, it was like to mark a milestone in my life and to just kind of tag myself as my property. Kind of the equivalent of getting my name tattooed on me, but I felt it was suiting. Anyways, anytime we are pushing anything out, it does eventually cycle back to us. And like when we're doing curse work and stuff like that, it goes through that other person and processes all the way around. There's not a lot of like this, anything you send out comes back to you threefold. It's spirals, not circles. What you send out is not going to be the same thing you get back. Stuff like that can get so twisted around. It's only when it doesn't work, it's when you miss that it can be a problem. Or if you have feelings of guilt. Or you have someone do a return to sender. And there are ways to defend against the return to sender as well. If you're trying to curse somebody, it is valuable and probably wise to then, in that intention, put a reminder that it is circular, not spiral, and that when this energy comes back to you, it will be in another form. I am so convinced and understanding of this idea that I don't really need to say it every time, but it's important to remind yourself that the threefold law doesn't exist. It is spirals, not circles. Yeah, you might sometimes smell like crap if you work in a sewer. This is indeed true. And if you're running around cursing people all the time, something's gonna go wrong. It's just plain simple facts of life. Just like if you're running around being a dick to everybody all the time, if you're running around slapping everybody, ever you go slapping people in the face, eventually that's gonna stop working out for you. This is true. This is true. The The best person to cast on is yourself and to cast love, hope, and always cast in a positive feeling into yourself. Indeed. Indeed. And this particular episode was supposed to be on protecting oneself with spellcraft. All of a sudden I can't speak. But we've gotten off topic a whole lot tonight. And that's okay. That's okay. Um a lot of this protection aspect really comes down to having proper understanding of the self, having that cohesive astral form. And there are ways to go about that. Know thyself, right? You want to have that full understanding of the self. You want to, maybe understanding's the wrong word, right? That's the wrong word. It's definitely the wrong word. Because you can never fully understand yourself. You can never get an objective. That's the one thing you can never have an objective look at. You can get as objective as you can, but the full, true, well, not the full, but the true rendition of the self is the one doing the perceiving. All right, it was good to see you on here, Kiana. And I love that I know how. I'm happy that I finally know how to say your name. The live's going to be ending pretty soon, anyways. I usually do about 3 hours, and I'm at 2 minutes. I'm at 2 hours and 57 minutes now, and I don't know. There's some good momentum, so I might keep going for a while beyond that. But well, there is a self. There is, but the self ultimately is simply perception, and that's why you can't get an objective look at the actual self because it is the one doing the perceiving. Interested in putting an enchantment on my gargoyle friend to help him protect me. Any suggestions or advice? Okay, so this is a spirit. Um. Okay. Is this a outside spirit or is this like a tulpa that you've created? Because the advice, some of the advice would be the same, but some of it's a little different, depending. Um. In either case, a gift of a properly charged piece of selenite for them to use as a weapon can be very powerful. What I mean by a properly charged piece of selenite, if you're going to be giving it to an astral being, it needs to be charged by you with ideally that same thing that I talked about with the pew pew. You put a paradox inside of the selenite. And then also visualize part of it being inert at the back. You give it an inert back that is holding that paradox that's pushing out. So they have a chunk of it they can hold on to. And this is like giving them balefire. And that can be given to either type of being. um, handing them that paradox without the piece of selenite can work as well. Because I mean, in Utah, where I'm from, selenite is everywhere. Up here, I couldn't even tell you where I get a piece of selenite except for the pieces that I already have. So to me, it's like, oh yeah, just get a piece of selenite. Might not be as easy where you're at. You can anchor that paradox into any object. Selenite is ideal in that the pattern connected to selenite is pure purification. If you can push energy through a piece of selenite and direct it out, it will just strip everything down to its base particles. Everything that it hits on an astral level is just going to be ripped down to its base particles. That's why I say it's like giving them balefire. Oh, that's pretty cool. Or the merging of a spirit of a house cat and a 200-year-old gargoyle that was invoked into a gargoyle statue. Yes, that's the thing about gargoyle. There are some very old gargoyles in statues, and in a way, the whole gargoyle thing is they're kind of created beings in the beginning, but they're a class of created beings that have achieved independence. And so that's why merging it with the cat spirit not only would work very well because of the tulpa esque nature of a gargoyle, but cats are also linked to that as well. I feel like there was an important bit there that I somehow just kind of glossed over. Yeah, giving them an enchanted weapon. Like I said, if you have access to selenite, that's pretty good. But I missed something important there about the gargoyle connecting with the ghost of a house cat. There's an important bit there that maybe I'll be able to come back to. But as Melissa said, I really like that combination. It just it grooves somehow, right? That's cool. It's very cool. Okay, so I had a bit more to say on that. Um, a being like that, I'm assuming you've already connected it to the space of your home, but especially with gargoyles. Just for anyone else listening, because I'm assuming you've already done this. If not, then you know this is good information for you as well. But you want to specifically connect a gargoyle with the space that it is going to protect, right? Because that's what gargoyles protect is a place. And you want to have the gargoyle officially bonded to that space. Whatever ritual you choose. Yes. See, there you go. So you've already done it. It doesn't there doesn't have to be a specific ritual, but there needs to be something. There needs to be some official connection of the gargoyle to its space. Whatever ritual you want to form or create for that. Yes. Yes, Melissa is viewing the live as well. Same Melissa, the one I knew from high school. And I am, this is exactly what I'm trying to do is create some community here. So I'm glad that, my brother, friends from high school, my spouse are all on here. Actually, some new friends, Black Unigriffin, Max, um, some Kiana. They've taken off now. This is actually the first time they've been on here. Gracious Sunchild, they've been on here a few times, I believe. Anyways, um, I don't want to try and list off everybody's name. There's a few more that have been on here quite a bit recently. If you've, sorry if I didn't mention your name. I don't mean to leave people out, but anyways, um, I was talking about the hand thing. I feel like there was more to say there. This is a great biohack for the muscle memory. Muscle memory. There we go. All of these things. Ritual, physical, any of that. One of the things that we're trying to create is muscle memory. You want to create those neural pathways, not just in like, for the stick where you want to create that physical muscle memory, but the neural pathways for that. That's what creates the momentum and cycles of how we move when we are performing magic. And so that's why this is so valuable because we are always moving our hands in connection with each other. Even when, like, I do a lot of stuff where I'm holding my hands out to sense and I'm visualizing an energy field coming out from one hand, circling around, and it's going back into the other one. But there's always that interconnectedness of the hands. And things like this is how you get that. Doesn't need to be like this is a bit short. But that loop is part of it's a hack. It's a hack for creating that muscle memory. Anyways, I've still got quite a bit of beer left. I think we can keep going for a bit longer, but I'm gonna have to do another intermission. Just a moment. I just wanted to do one thing real quick. Gotta do an intermission. Be right back. Okay. Yeah, I can give Melissa your number. Andy, unfortunately, is not on Facebook these days because Facebook sucks at recovering accounts when things go bad. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and keep going for a bit longer than normal. I feel like we got a good momentum going. I'm having fun. I got a bit more of a cider to finish here. So we'll keep going for a bit longer. So, um, today's subject is supposed to be personal protection. I actually have a huge amount to say on the subject, especially when I was young and full of testosterone. This was one of my um, extreme areas of focus, especially when it comes to using magic for literal physical protection. One of the most important things I have to say there is the correlation between magic and muscle memory and the getting used to the idea. Like, they talk about in martial arts about punching through the target, but that's not what I want to say. We want to, when we are find ourselves in a position where we have to strike someone, you want to put that into it. And your target shouldn't be like when they talk about martial arts about aiming for like I think it's 3 inches behind whatever it is you're striking at. You should instead be putting that flame, that power, that into the strike and using the lessons that we understand. Momentum. Yeah. One of the things I talk about over and over again in sorcery is momentum. This is extremely important on the material plane. Momentum matters more than almost anything when it comes to the material plane. Force, where that force is going. And so we want to keep that in mind. When we strike, the person is going to have a reaction to how we hit. I talk about that in the uh, larger video on cane fighting. When you hit the object, your blade is going to have repercussion. Or not your blade, your cane is going to have repercussion. And this is actually part of how you catch it and bring it back to perform the next strike. If you hit them in the hand, it's going to go like that. If you hit them on the blade, it's going to bounce back. And you hit the side of the blade, not the front of the blade, because momentum. And this understanding of momentum. How does a living thing become a golem or a golem become a living thing? Um, I've been using a certain definition of golem on this particular channel. And it's basically anything where it's astral form, like the thing that I visualize as its spirit matches its physical form. So like Manatellu, right? When I made Manatellu into a marionette, that then took him from a egregore to a golem. Remember, I had him in the jar. You were pretty young when I had him in the jar. But and later on, after he come back, I had him in the marionette. And at that point, his physical form and his astral form matched. So I called that. So that's what I call a golem. Oh, okay. The gargoyle and the cat thing. Um, that would work and mesh very well because gargoyles, being created beings, they are like tulpas. Like, remember how I'm sure you've heard me talk about Froggy Dundee. Man, I tell you, he is here with me. Okay, so maybe you haven't heard me talk about Froggy Dundee. It's something that it's one of my wearable tulpas. It's the idea with the wearable tulpa is I have you come up with a character and then you assume the role of that character, right? Just like all the other little imaginary beings that you've seen me create over the years. Like I imagine a being and then I basically pretend it's real and get it to do pretend it's doing things and then they happen. So a wearable tulpa is where you've created a being and then you get inside of it and kind of take on its role. Yes, I am Froggy Dundee. That's what I'm saying. Like Froggy Dundee is a role that, well, Dad came up with the name. He said, "Hey, it's Froggy Dundee," but I created that into this little role that I would assume whenever I was frog hunting, or you've probably seen me talking about it when we were like dove hunting or something. Is probably when I would be most likely to bring that up where me and you have been hanging out. Eat the tulip, Andrew. These people don't know that story. I may have to tell it in a minute, but that's why the gargoyle would work so well. Because gargoyles, in essence, are created beings, which means they are a role that can be assumed. They are a role that is acting on its own. They are performing a role of being a gargoyle. And when they are reach self-awareness, like it's a little it's kind of a gray area, you know, but it leaves them very open for meshing with an actual soul like the ghost of a house cat. So the tulip thing, I guess I could tell the story. So yeah, I guess I will. Um the government had just subsidized the price of lettuce. I was 16 years old. And me and my dad had just gotten real high and we've been drinking. And my dad goes off on a tear. And he goes off on a tear about the government's goddamn lettuce. And he's like, "We don't need the government's goddamn lettuce. We can eat this. We can eat that. We can eat that tulip. Boy, eat that tulip." But my dad never really called me boy. I called Andy boy a lot. But my dad's like, "Art, eat that tulip." So I reach over and I grab the tulip and he's been, it was not one of them moments where you argue with dad. So I grabbed the tulip. It so happened to be a red tulip. And I put it in my mouth and started eating it. And he's like, "That's how they commit suicide in Holland, don't you?" So I go, "Ah," and I run into the house and I've got red pouring down my mouth. And my poor mom thought my dad had hit me in the mouth. She goes running out, yelling at him. Oh, doesn't sound that funny when I tell it. Fair enough. But the gargoyle is, in essence, like the class of beings There are many creative beings that can be self-aware. Like Manatellu, who I mentioned a little while ago, is very self-aware and is a creative being. And like gargoyles even seem to be able to reproduce other gargoyles, but they got their beginning as created beings. They're created beings that have reached a level of essentially becoming a race of beings, and can be created now as well by people choosing to create gargoyles. I mean, that story with me and my dad and a tulip, it was pretty funny. My poor mom, like I said, I didn't. I was a little freaked out that I thought for a minute there, I thought I'd been poisoned. But my poor mom, I come running into the house, red coming out my mouth. She thought dad had just like slapped me in the mouth or something. She's like, "What did you do?" But at least I have the kind of mom that would protect me if something like that had happened. I think we all know who you were laughing at, Andy. It's all right. You were there for that one. You would have been like what, 5? And it actually happened at grandma's house, not our house. So yeah, I was talking a bit about curse word before and the response to curse word. This is one of the most important aspects. When you think you have been cursed, is your reaction to it when you start suspecting it. Like I said earlier, don't panic. Do divination. Ideally, in my opinion, do a spell chain. See if you can find any things out there. But also, when you first see, like if somebody's gone full bore and left a poppet on your doorstep, don't touch it. But don't get all, "Ah!" Remain calm. Visualize a mirror. Visualize whatever shielding you want to use. Try not to look at it directly. Encase it in something as quickly as possible without panicking or hurrying. From there, wrap it in black cloth. Get yourself a stick that you can break. Put it on the cloth. Lift it up. Draw out the line of fate into the stick. Break the stick. Now, open back up the black cloth. Still, do not touch the poppet. Pick it up, tongs or something like that. If it has actual connection to you, like hair, picture, piece of one of your old shirts, fingernail clippings, whatever. At this point, now that you have identified that, embrace it. Not what has been done to you, but now treat this figure as if it has been returned to you, as it is something that is being saved, something that has been returned from a hostage kidnapping situation. Don't burn it and don't freak out and burn it, which is what most people would probably tell you to do in this situation.
No, bring it in, rehabilitate it, care for it, take care of it, do what you can to return, make it look as if it has been healed. And at the same time, promise it vengeance. And use the link that they have created, leaving this popping on your doorstep between the two of you. Ha! People don't usually leave boyfriends on your doorstep. You find ex-boyfriends on your doorstep, wrap them in black cloth, and burn them. Oh, whoops. Did I say that? Okay. So, just want to check over here. Quick. Man, I'm sure coughing a lot. Wish your boyfriend would show up on my doorstep. Well, put that into a sigil. Like I was saying earlier in the live, um, there's nothing wrong with the love spell that is not targeted at a particular individual. It can, with that being said, there's nothing wrong with casting a love spell that is targeting the type of individual that you wish to be with. That's how I got with Felix. And there is nothing wrong or unwholesome about our relationship. I didn't see them online and be like, oh, I like that person. I'm going to cast a spell to be with them. And even like you could cast a spell to be like, put yourself in a position where that could be a possibility. And even that, it's a dramatic act, I feel like. But if you're not doing casting anything on their will, even that would probably be fine. I've never done it. Just cast into the lines of possibility of you meeting this person. Yeah, okay, probably. But like in the case of Felix and I literally casted a spell, and part of the spell was to write down a list of all the things of the person that I wanted to be with. Like, I want them to be like this. I want them to be like that. I want them, you know, I threw in a couple extremes that I didn't get. Like, Felix isn't rich, but they are everything I actually wanted. Everything I actually wanted. You know? And there's nothing wrong with that. Me and Felix as well do consensual love spells with each other. Like, we have these chalices that we keep on our altar, that we literally have an altar that is our altar, and it's a romance altar. It's our love altar. And on there are two small chalices. And anytime that
I leave, or if they were to leave, which would feel really weird for me if I was to be here and they were gone. Might happen at some point. They have a right to decide that they want to go somewhere and wander for a while. So it could happen at some point. But either way, when one of us leaves, the one that's leaving takes the other person's chalice with them. They do a little ceremony before they leave. And then while we are apart, we have that chalice and we hold those close to us. We hold those dear to us. And when we miss each other, we can go to that chalice and we leave a kiss for each other inside the chalice. And it helps. Like the last time that I had to go back to Utah, well, I'm very glad that I had that chalice. Because that was stuff with my mom. Not gonna get too deep into that right now, but yeah, Max. I mean, that's another thing is just, you know, actually put out the initiative. Yes, consensual casting strengthens what's there. Felix and I have, we got consensual mutual love spells. You know, you can cast protection on somebody, especially if it's consensual. Nothing wrong with casting a protection spell on other people. And that gets us back around to the actual topic of the night, which it's funny because it's one of my favorite topics, but I feel like we've just been kind of skirting around it a lot of tonight and just covering other things in that same area. But protection spells can be cast on others, but when you have their consent and their knowledge that it is being cast, it contains more potency, right? Yes, consensual love spells are very much like writing each other poetry. I like that. I like that metaphor, Melissa. That's I don't know. I think it goes beyond a metaphor. That's a a link. There's a synchronicity in that. They are the same thing. You know, metaphor means they are alike. So it goes beyond that. They are the same thing. They're just a leveling up of that. Yeah. When someone knows and accepts and actually embraces anything that you were casting upon them, that strengthens the power of it. And this can most definitely be done with protection spells. And part of the point and purpose of a protection spell is that feeling of safety. You don't want it to be a false sense of security, but a feeling of safety. And so when someone has belief, belief imparts reality, as we have discussed on many episodes. When they have belief in the protection spell that you have cast upon them, that gives them that feeling of safety, that confidence that will genuinely help keep them safe. There's more to it than that. I'm not trying to say that magic is just psychology, but psychology is part of magic, right? That's why casting a spell of making yourself feel more to make yourself feel more confident can be so effective because there's a psychology aspect in there. But it doesn't have to be all there is to it. There is more to it than that. Like we talked about in the last live with the morphic fields, even though I hate that I don't like the name that he used for it. I feel like he's just being cliche. But that emanation that comes when someone has a protection spell on them, anyone that might consider bothering them, at least on some level, they're going to get a feeling of that person having been protected. Like, oh no, they're protected, even if they don't think it consciously, which they're actually quite unlikely to. There is that general vibe. Now, if someone were to somehow tell that person, "Oh, the protection spell's been cast on that person," that actually might make that would, in some cases, almost invalidate it. At least on that level, the psychology level, because now that they know, it's either going to like, oh, that's going to scare them, push them farther away, or they're going to disbelieve. It could even make them more likely to bother the person on the psychological level. But at the same time, you have the other magics going on that can still interfere with the person actually being able to get in a position to put the other person in danger. 'Cause that's the thing you have to understand about this, right? That's kind of how it works. Is when a spell has been cast, it puts puts pinch points in the possible ways that a moment is going to manifest. So a lot of times when a spell is working, it'll just seem random bits, random things occurred. It's like when I say that having ill intent towards me is bad for is bad for people's health because of the protection spells that I have on me. If someone then intends to cause me harm, the the possibilities of that person's future potential become infringed because anything that they can do that would then bring them closer to causing me harm, those potential pathways become closed off to them. And therefore, having an ill intent towards me is harmful for a person's health because there are things that they might have been able to do to grow even, but the damp but the ability to grow in that way is something that would then also bring them closer to their goal of harming me. That pathway becomes closed off. I'm not sure what my point is there, except for that that's how magic works. It contains possibilities and moves their positions so that the pattern will come out in a way that maintains the intent that was placed within the weaving. Okay. I'm going to do one more intermission We're over the 3.5 hour mark at this point. Moment. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. But at this point, dinner is really calling to me. Oh, good night, Black Unit Griffin. I'm probably going to be calling the calling it pretty soon here myself, because dinner is definitely calling my name. I had heard rumor of chicken pie. That's why I'm rather excited about dinner. Who is calling me? Andy, I'm still on the live. Oh, no, I'm back now. Anyways, I'll call you when it's. I'll call you back in a bit. Okay, bye. I don't know why I answered that. Should have just told him on here. Anyways, um, yeah, I am getting impatient for that dinner. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna open the floor up to comments, questions, concerns in this video or any other video. Um, yeah, we're gonna be coming back to this topic soon. We hit some good bits here, but honestly, I'm never gonna feel like I'm fully said everything I have to say on this particular topic. This is an area of focus for me, and the way we've jumped around tonight, I'm concerned that you eat. Yes, well, I eat very well here, Melissa. I eat very well here. One of our roommates, Tracy, is actually a 5-star chef. She has all the training. She is an amazing cook. You're welcome, Max. Um, that is definitely one of the biggest things that I can suggest in that area. Like, if it's a created being, you can also, well, especially with the gargoyle, you actually can do things to work. Yeah, because we know this now. Good night, Melissa. With where it's a gargoyle, and I understand now that it is on one level a created being. This might get a little squidgy, where I guess it was someone else actually created the gargoyle aspect of it, but you could probably help evolve the being, the gargoyle, into a larger form if you wanted to. You know, do it like a Pokemon. I don't know if you're into Pokemon. For some reason, that immediately hit my mind. You know how the Pokemons evolve? I'm not into Pokemon myself, so I don't have a good explanation for this. But evolve it like a Pokemon, maybe even. You could do that as well. And I would love to hear some results. I will keep an eye out for that on your channel, or we could discuss it on one of the future lives if you wish. But yeah, I'd love to hear some results on how that goes. Anyways, um, what's going on here? Yeah, I figured. Okay. So, anyways, awesome. Yeah, like I said, I would love to hear some results. But I do think it's time for me to call it for the night. That chicken pie is calling my name, and that beer is just about finished. So yeah, um, I'm gonna give like just a few minutes here in case anyone else has any comments, questions, or concerns that we haven't covered. And then I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette and have some chicken pie. Had a pretty good day today. I went fishing earlier. Didn't catch no fish. I saw someone else catch a tiny little salmon. Felix caught a rockfish. Actually, I'm in a pretty good mood now, but there were parts of today where I was quite annoyed. Not every day has to be perfect. Breakfast at this time. No, it's only like 12:30. Middle of my day. Well, maybe not today because I've been drinking. On the nights where I drink, I go to bed a lot earlier than when I don't. Anyways, um, yeah, I think that's I think that's it for the night. Bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.